I'm Chloe, 30, a woman, and I'm here to tell you how my world was shattered by a single, careless laugh. My own fiancé was complicit as his best friend told a room full of people that I was just a temporary stand-in until he found someone better. In that moment, I knew I had to leave. What I didn't know was that in leaving, the entire fake world I had been supporting for him would collapse overnight. Our love story, or what I believed was a love story, began like many others. I met Liam at a mutual friend's gallery opening. I was there to appreciate the art and architecture of the space. He was there to network. I was an architect, passionate about building things that last, things with integrity and strong foundations. Liam was a social media manager, a burgeoning influencer who was passionate about building a brand. At the time, I found the contrast charming. He was the glittering, fast-paced world of digital media, and I was the steady, grounded world of steel and concrete. He was effervescent and charming, with a smile that could disarm a battalion and a seemingly endless well of confidence. I was quieter, more observant, finding satisfaction not in applause but in a well-executed blueprint. He pursued me with a dazzling intensity. He loved, he said, that I was so real. He admired my dedication to my craft, my ambition, and my success. I had worked tirelessly since college, climbing the ranks at a prestigious firm in the city, and by 28 I was leading my own projects. I was financially independent and proud of it. Liam, on the other hand, was still finding his footing. His influencer career was more of a dream than a reality, bringing in inconsistent and negligible income. He spoke of potential and future growth, and I, caught up in his charisma, believed in him. I was happy to be the stable foundation upon which he could build his dreams. I thought that's what a partnership was. He dated for a year before he proposed. The proposal itself was a production, perfectly framed for Instagram with a professional photographer he'd hired hiding in the bushes. A part of me felt a flicker of unease, a sense that the moment was more for his followers than for us, but I pushed it down. I loved him, and I said yes. We moved into a stunning loft apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the city skyline, an apartment I knew I would be paying for almost entirely on my own. "It's an investment in our future, babe," he'd said, "and it's the perfect backdrop for my content. When my brand takes off, I'll cover everything." I nodded and signed the lease, my name the only one on the official documents. This became the pattern of our relationship. My salary funded the life, and his social media curated it. The expensive dinners, the weekend getaways, the designer clothes he wore in his posts, it was all paid for by my long hours at the firm. In return, I was featured on his feed as his beautiful, successful, and supportive fiancé. We were, to his 50,000 followers, the ultimate power couple. The problem was, only one of us was actually providing the power. His best friend, Mark, was a constant presence in our lives. They were two sides of the same coin. Where Liam was the charming face of the brand, Mark, a PR consultant, was the slick strategist behind the scenes. He was always whispering in Liam's ear about engagement metrics, brand collaborations, and follower growth. Mark treated me with a kind of polite dismissal. He saw me not as a person, but as an asset to Liam's brand. I was the successful architect fiancé, a valuable character in the story they were selling. Looking back, the warning signs were there, like hairline fractures in a foundation. The first time I truly felt like a prop was about 6 months into our engagement. My firm had won a major award for a public library I had designed. It was the proudest moment of my professional life. My parents flew in, and we all went out to a celebratory dinner at one of the city's finest restaurants. Liam was, of course, there, but he wasn't really there. For the entire evening, he was on his phone. He wasn't texting, he was posting. He took a picture of the menu, a video of the champagne being poured, a selfie of us where he was beaming, and I was trying to hide my disappointment. The caption read, "Celebrating my amazing fiancé's big win. So proud to be on this journey with a woman who inspires me every day. Power couple success celebration." My father, a quiet man of few words, leaned over to me at one point and whispered, "Does he ever put that thing away?" I just gave him a weak smile. Later that night, Liam was giddy, not about my award but about the post's performance. "Babe, we got over 3,000 likes in an hour. A few big accounts shared it. This is huge for our brand," he said, our brand. Not my achievement, not our celebration. The slow, cold drop of dread in my stomach was a feeling I was beginning to get used to. Another fracture appeared a few months later. We were having a casual brunch with Liam and Mark. I was talking about a difficult project at work, a zoning issue that was causing major headaches. I was passionate, explaining the technical details of the problem. Mark smirked and cut me off. Don't bore us with the nerd stuff, Chloe, he said, winking at Liam. We're trying to talk about the aesthetics of the new brand launch. I stopped, stunned. I looked at Liam, expecting him to say something to defend me even in a small way. Instead, he just chuckled. He's right, babe. Let's keep it light. Tell Mark about that funny thing that happened at the coffee shop. He didn't even notice the hurt in my eyes. He just changed the subject, smoothing over the moment as if my feelings were an inconvenient wrinkle in the fabric of his day. I felt small and foolish. My work, the very thing that paid for the brunch we were eating, was dismissed as nerd stuff, and my fiancé had co-signed the insult with a laugh. The financial discussions were the most telling. Whenever I would try to gently bring up our budget or the fact that our joint credit card bill, which was linked directly to my bank account, was getting astronomically high, he would become a master of deflection. Chloe, you have to think of it as a startup cost, he'd explain, his tone patient as if I were a child. I'm building an empire for us. Every dinner, every trip is content. It's an investment. You have to spend money to make money. He framed my entire salary as seed money for his venture. He never said, thank you for paying for everything. He said, thank you for believing in our vision. He was so convincing that I almost believed him myself, pushing aside the growing resentment that I was the only one making any tangible contributions. I was living in a beautiful apartment I couldn't fully enjoy, funding a lifestyle that felt increasingly hollow, with a man who saw me as a co-star in the movie of his life. And I was letting it happen, because I loved him, because we were engaged, because I kept telling myself that once his brand finally took off, everything would change. He would see me, he would appreciate me, and we would finally be a real team. But a foundation with fractures can only bear so much weight before it collapses entirely. I just didn't realize that the final, fatal blow would come from a single, cruel joke, and the deafening sound of my fiancé's laughter. The week before the party, the one that would end up being the final chapter of my life with Liam, was a microcosm of our entire relationship. It began with a professional triumph for me and ended with it being absorbed into the insatiable engine of his personal brand. On Monday morning, my boss called me into his office. I was nervous, my mind racing through all my active projects, searching for a potential mistake. But he was smiling. He told me that a major developer, one of the biggest in the country, had seen the library I designed. They were so impressed with the innovation and the design language that they specifically requested me to lead the pitch for their new multi-million-dollar corporate headquarters. It wasn't just a vote of confidence. It was a career-defining opportunity. It was the kind of project I had dreamed of since I was sketching buildings in the margins of my notebooks in school. I walked out of his office in a daze, my heart soaring. I felt a sense of validation that was pure and profound. This was mine. I had earned it through years of hard work, late nights, and unwavering dedication. The first person I wanted to tell, of course, was Liam. I called him, my voice buzzing with excitement. Liam, you're not going to believe what just happened, I said, pacing back and forth in the empty corridor outside my office. Hold on, babe, can you be quiet for a sec? He whispered urgently. I'm trying to film an unboxing video, and the audio has to be perfect. My excitement deflated instantly, replaced by a familiar pang of disappointment. I waited in silence, listening to the faint crinkling of packaging and his overly enthusiastic influencer voice on the other end. After what felt like an eternity, he came back on the line. Okay, I'm done. What's up? I tried to recapture the initial joy, but it was tainted. I told him the news about the developer and the project. His reaction was immediate and, in retrospect, predictable. Oh my God, Chloe, that's incredible, he exclaimed, but his next words revealed his true focus. This is it, this is the narrative we've been waiting for. My architect fiancé lands the deal of a lifetime. I can see the headline now. We have to do a whole series of posts. We can document the journey. We'll get so much engagement. I need to call Mark. He'll know how to spin this. He wasn't happy for me. He was happy for the content. My personal victory was immediately seen through the lens of its value to his brand. He didn't ask how I feel. He didn't ask if I was nervous or excited about the actual work. He just saw a new storyline, a new angle to exploit for likes and shares. Liam, I said, my voice flatter than I intended. It's not a narrative. It's my job. It's a huge amount of work. Exactly, and we're going to show people that hustle. It's authentic. It's relatable, he said, completely missing my point. Okay, I gotta go, babe. I need to storyboard this. Let's have a celebratory dinner tonight. Wear that blue dress. It pops on camera. He hung up, leaving me standing in the hallway, feeling more like a business asset than a beloved partner. The joy of my achievement felt cheapened, co-opted before I even had a chance to savor it myself. The rest of the week was consumed by two things: my frantic preparations for the initial pitch meeting and Liam's frantic preparations for his networking event. A party he was throwing at our apartment that Saturday. He insisted on calling it a networking event because it sounded more professional than a bunch of his influencer friends coming over to drink. He was obsessed with every detail of the party, but not in the way a normal host would be. He wasn't concerned with his guests' comfort. He was concerned with their photographic potential. Do you think this corner has good lighting for selfies? He asked me on Wednesday evening, pointing to a space in our living room. I was hunched over my laptop, reviewing structural plans, and I looked up bleary-eyed. I don't know, Liam. There's a lamp there, I said, my patience wearing thin. No, I mean, is it soft lighting? Will it be flattering? Mark says we need an Instagrammable corner. Maybe we should buy one of those neon signs, something that says good vibes only or something. We are not buying a neon sign, I said firmly. My head hurts, Liam. Can we please talk about this later? He sighed dramatically. You just don't get it, Chloe. This party is a huge opportunity. A couple of big-time creators are coming. If they post from our apartment and tag me, my follower count could skyrocket. This is work. It's just as important as your blueprints. The comparison was so absurd, it was almost laughable. My work resulted in tangible, enduring structures that would serve thousands of people. His work resulted in fleeting digital images designed to make people envious of a life that wasn't even real. But in his mind, they were one and the same. On Friday, the day before the party, the disconnection between us felt like a chasm. I came home late, completely exhausted after a 12-hour day of nonstop work on the pitch. All I wanted was a quiet evening, maybe to order some food and watch a movie. I walked into the apartment to find Liam and Mark in the middle of the living room, surrounded by shopping bags. There she is, Mark said with a salesman's smile. The breadwinner has returned from the mill. Liam, holding up a new, ridiculously expensive-looking jacket, rushed over to me. Babe, look what we got for the party. Mark's friend works at the showroom and got us a major discount. I looked at the bags. They were from some of the most expensive boutiques in the city. Liam, we talked about this. The credit card bill was insane last month. I told you, it's an investment, he said, his voice taking on that familiar, condescending tone. I have to look the part. I'm building a luxury lifestyle brand. I can't be wearing last season's jacket. It's not your brand if I'm the one paying for it. The words flew out of my mouth before I could stop them. The air in the room went still. It was the first time I had stated the truth so plainly, so devoid of the careful language I usually used to protect his ego. Mark cleared his throat, sensing the tension. He's creating a platform for both of you, Chloe. When this takes off, you'll be thanking him. Liam's face was a mixture of shock and indignation. I can't believe you said that, he said quietly. After all I do to promote us as a team. The guilt washed over me immediately. Maybe I was being unfair. Maybe I was just stressed from work. He was trying in his own way. I backtracked, just as I always did. "I'm sorry," I murmured. "I'm just tired. The jacket looks great on you." The relief on his face was palpable. The crisis was averted. He could go back to his fantasy. "It's okay, babe, I get it. You're under a lot of pressure," he said, kissing my forehead. "Now, what do you think? Should I wear it with the dark jeans or the black ones?" As I watched him model his new clothes, I felt a profound sense of loneliness. I was standing in my own home, yet I felt like a visitor. I was engaged to a man who lived in a world I funded but didn't truly belong to. I pushed the feeling down, telling myself it was just pre-wedding jitters, just the stress of my job. I told myself that Saturday's party would be fun. I would relax, see our friends, and everything would feel normal again. But I was only fooling myself. The foundation was already broken, and the whole structure was about to come crashing down. Saturday arrived with a palpable buzz of energy in the apartment, though none of it was mine. While I spent the morning at the office, getting in a few extra hours on the pitch, Liam was in full production mode. When I came home that afternoon, our serene, minimalist loft had been transformed. He had rented special lighting equipment and set it up in various corners. He had curated a playlist of trendy, unobtrusive music. On the kitchen island, instead of simple snacks, there was an elaborate charcuterie board that looked less like food and more like a prop from a magazine shoot. "What do you think?" he asked, spinning to face me with a wide grin. He was already dressed in his new jacket, his hair perfectly styled. "Looks pretty epic, right?" "It's a lot, Liam," I said, setting my briefcase down. The sterile, staged atmosphere felt unwelcoming. It didn't feel like our home, it felt like a set. "It has to be," he said, his eyes scanning the room. "Perfection is the brand." As guests began to arrive, I put on my best smile and tried to play the part of the gracious co-host. The crowd was mostly Liam and Mark's circle. Other influencers, aspiring models, PR people, and a few vaguely defined creative entrepreneurs. They spoke a language I didn't fully understand, a dizzying mix of jargon about algorithms, engagement pods, and brand synergy. They didn't have conversations. They performed them, always aware of the potential for a candid photo or a story clip. I watched Liam move through the room. He wasn't connecting with people, he was collecting content. His phone was a permanent extension of his hand. He'd pull a group together for a selfie, his face lit up in a perfect, practiced smile, and the moment the camera was off, the smile would vanish, and he'd be scanning the room for his next shot. I felt a growing sense of detachment, an invisible wall between me and everyone else. I was the silent partner, the quiet financier of this elaborate performance. I eventually found a small group of people I actually knew, a couple from my rock climbing gym and an old college friend. We huddled near the kitchen, having a real conversation about our jobs, a recent movie we'd all seen, and our summer plans. For a few minutes, it felt normal. I felt like myself. But then Liam, with Mark in tow, descended upon our quiet corner. "There you are," Liam boomed, draping an arm around my shoulders. It felt less like an embrace and more like he was claiming a possession. "Guys, I want to make sure you've met my incredible fiancé, Chloe." My friends smiled politely. Liam immediately launched into his pitch. "Chloe is an absolute rockstar architect. She just landed this massive project. We're going to be documenting the whole process on my channel. It's going to be an inspiring journey." My college friend, who knew me well, raised an eyebrow. "Wow, Chloe, that's amazing. You must be thrilled." Before I could answer, Mark jumped in. "She's the brains and he's the beauty," he said with a slick grin. "They're the perfect package." The comment hung in the air, and I felt that familiar, uncomfortable prickle of being reduced to a cliché. I tried to steer the conversation back to something genuine, but Liam and Mark were on a roll, talking over me about brand potential and follower demographics. My friends, clearly uncomfortable, soon made their excuses and drifted away, leaving me alone with Liam, Mark, and a couple of other influencers who had been drawn in by their loud talk. This was the moment, the one that would replay in my mind in slow motion for months to come. One of the other influencers, a guy named Kyle with an unnervingly perfect tan, looked me up and down. "So you're an architect. That's like a real job with math and stuff, right?" I forced a smile. "Yes, it involves a bit of math." Mark laughed, a sharp, barking sound. He leaned in conspiratorially, gesturing towards me with his drink. "Chloe is great, seriously, she's the ultimate support system." He then turned his attention to Liam, clapping him on the shoulder. "She's the perfect stand-in man. A solid, stable placeholder to keep you comfortable and funded until you find a real investor for the brand, you know. Someone with like a trust fund or a famous last name." The words hit me with physical force. It felt as if the air had been punched out of my lungs. A complete and utter silence fell over our small group. Everyone's eyes, including mine, darted to Liam. This was it. This was the moment of truth. Here was the vilest, most dismissive insult imaginable laid bare in front of everyone. It wasn't just a joke. It was a distillation of every fear I had been pushing down for years, that I wasn't his partner, I was his stepping stone. I watched his face, praying for him to be angry, praying for him to defend my honor, honor, our relationship. I needed him to shut Mark down, to tell him he was out of line, to affirm that I was the love of his life, not a temporary convenience. He didn't. Instead, a slow smile spread across Liam's face. He let out a short, sharp laugh. It wasn't a nervous laugh or a polite laugh. It was a laugh of genuine amusement, of camaraderie. He looked at Mark, his best friend, his co-conspirator, and he laughed. Then he lightly punched Mark's arm. "Man, you're crazy," he said, shaking his head as if Mark had just told a harmlessly silly joke. He never once looked at me. In that instant, the entire world went quiet. The trendy music, the chatter, the clinking of glasses, it all faded into a dull, distant hum. The only thing I could hear was the frantic, panicked beat of my own heart. The blood drained from my face and a glacial coldness spread through my veins. It wasn't just the insult, it was the confirmation. The laugh was the period at the end of the sentence. Mark had said the words, but Liam's laugh was the signature on the contract. It was the truth. I looked at their smiling faces, at the nodding approval of the other influencers who were now chuckling along, and I saw everything with a horrifying, gut-wrenching clarity. I wasn't a person in this room. I was a utility, a means to an end, a temporary line of credit with a good personality. My love for him, which I had guarded and nurtured and made excuses for, evaporated in that single terrible moment. It didn't fade, it was extinguished, leaving behind nothing but cold, hard ash. Without a word, I turned and walked away. No one tried to stop me. I moved through the party like a ghost, the vibrant, laughing people nothing more than blurry shapes. I reached our bedroom, my bedroom, and quietly closed the door, the sound of his laughter still echoing in my ears. It was over. I knew it with a certainty that was as absolute and unbreakable as the foundations I designed. Inside the sanctuary of the bedroom, the muffled bass of the party music pulsed through the door like a taunting heartbeat. For a moment, I just stood there in the center of the room, my hands trembling. There were no tears. The shock was too profound, too crystalline. It was a feeling of pure, cold clarity, as if a dirty window I'd been staring through for years had just been shattered, revealing the ugly, unvarnished truth behind it. He laughed. He had heard the most degrading summary of my worth in his life, and he had laughed. That single thought looped in my mind, cutting through any instinct to be sad or to doubt myself. It wasn't an overreaction. It wasn't me being too sensitive. It was a moment of profound betrayal that revealed everything. Our entire relationship, the planned wedding, the power couple brand, it was all a lie. I wasn't his partner, I was his sponsor. And his sponsorship was apparently up for review, pending a better offer. My paralysis broke. A strange, calm resolve washed over me. I walked over to the closet I shared with him, my side meticulously organized, his a chaotic explosion of new clothes, many with the tags still on. I pulled out my largest suitcase from the top shelf. The movement was fluid, automatic. My mind was quiet, my objective clear. I began to pack, not everything, just the essentials. My work clothes for the coming week. My toiletries. The sentimental things that were truly mine, a framed photo of my parents, a collection of old books, the worn-out sweatshirt I loved. I moved with a detached efficiency, like an architect clearing a site for demolition. Each item I placed in the bag was a quiet declaration of my independence. The door opened, and Liam breezed in, a drink in his hand and a slight slur to his words. He was still smiling. "Hey, you disappeared," he said casually, not even noticing the open suitcase on the bed. "Everything okay?" Kyle was asking about that library project. "I think he wants to film a reel there." I didn't turn to look at him. I just continued to fold a pair of jeans and place them in the suitcase. The silence stretched, and the smile finally faded from his voice. "Chloe, what are you doing?" I zipped up the toiletries bag with a definitive sound and placed it inside. Only then did I turn to face him. I kept my expression neutral, my voice even. "I'm leaving, Liam." He blinked, confused, as if I had just spoken in a foreign language. "Leaving? What are you talking about? Leaving the party? It's not even midnight." He took a step closer, and it was only then that his eyes registered the suitcase. His face slackened with genuine bewilderment. "Whoa, what is this? Are you serious? Where are you going?" "I don't know yet," I said calmly. "A hotel, a friend's place, but I'm not staying here." "Why?" The question was so laced with cluelessness it was almost insulting. "What is wrong? Did someone say something to you?" I stared at him, my disbelief warring with a cold, rising anger. "You can't be sir." "Ias," I said, my voice dangerously low. "You were standing right there." He finally started to connect the dots, but he connected them wrong. "Oh, you mean Mark? Come on, babe, you can't be this upset about that. It was a stupid joke. You know how he is. He has a twisted sense of humor." "It may have been his joke," I said, my voice as sharp and precise as a drafting pencil. "But it was your laugh." He recoiled as if I'd slapped him. "My laugh? I was just trying to defuse the situation. What was I supposed to do? Get in a fight with my best friend in the middle of our party?" "You were supposed to be my partner," I shot back, the control over my voice finally starting to fray. "You were supposed to have my back. You were supposed to look at the man who called me your temporary placeholder and tell him he was wrong. But you didn't, Liam. You laughed with him, because on some level you agree with him." "That is not true," he protested, his voice rising in panic. He was finally realizing this was real. "Chloe, you're being completely irrational. You're blowing this way out of proportion. It was a meaningless comment." "No," I said, shaking my head slowly. The cold calm was returning. "It was the most honest thing that's been said in this apartment in years. It explained everything. The way you use my job for your content, the way you spend my money to build your brand, the way you see me as a supporting character in your story. I'm the stable placeholder." He just had the nerve to say it out loud. I zipped the suitcase shut. The sound was loud and final in the tense room. I lifted it off the bed and walked towards the door. He moved to block my path, his face a mask of desperation and confusion. This was not part of the script. This was not a scene he could control or reshoot. "Chloe, stop. Don't do this. We're engaged. We're getting married in 6 months. You can't just throw everything away over one stupid comment." "I'm not," I said, meeting his gaze without flinching. "I'm throwing away the lie. What we have isn't a partnership. I see that now. I'm your financier, I'm your live-in source of credibility, and I quit, effective immediately." His face crumpled. For the first time, I saw genuine fear in his eyes. But it wasn't the fear of losing me, the person. It was the dawning, terrifying realization of what my departure actually meant for his life. "Please, Chloe," he begged, his voice cracking. "Let's just talk about this in the morning. Don't leave like this." "There's nothing left to talk about," I said, my voice softening slightly, not with pity but with the finality of my decision. "You showed me exactly who you are and what I'm worth to you. I believe you." I sidestepped him and walked out of the bedroom, suitcase in hand. I crossed the living room, a silent, determined ghost moving through a party that was suddenly muted and awkward. A few people stopped talking and stared, sensing the drama. I saw Mark's face in the crowd, his expression a cocktail of shock and dawning horror. I ignored them all. I opened the front door, walked out into the hallway, and didn't look back. The click of the door closing behind me was the most liberating sound I had ever heard. It was the sound of my old life ending, and my new one, whatever it would be, beginning. I spent the first night in a sterile, anonymous hotel room a few miles away from the life I had just detonated. The adrenaline from the confrontation carried me through the process of checking in and getting settled. But once I was alone, with the city lights twinkling outside my window, the enormity of what I had done finally hit me. It wasn't a wave of regret, but a tremor of fear. I had just walked away from my home, my fiancé, my future, or at least the future I had been planning. But beneath the fear was a bedrock of certainty. I had made the right decision. The betrayal had been a toxic catalyst, but it had clarified everything. I wasn't mourning the loss of a relationship. I was mourning the fact that the relationship had never been real in the first place. That night, I didn't sleep. Instead, I worked. Fueled by coffee from the in-room machine and a cold, burning sense of purpose, I opened my laptop and began the systematic dismantling of the world I had built for Liam. It was surprisingly easy. When your name is the only one on every document, you hold all the cards. My first email was to the property manager of our loft apartment. I read the lease agreement, which I had saved on my cloud drive. There was a penalty for breaking the lease, a significant one, but I could afford it. I composed a formal, emotionless email stating that I, the sole leaseholder, would be vacating the property and would pay the required termination fee. I gave them 30 days' notice, as stipulated. Next, I logged into my online banking portal. The joint credit card we had, the one Liam used for his brand investments, was a supplementary card. On my primary account, with 3 clicks, I reported the card as lost and requested it be canceled and a new one issued only to me. I then transferred a substantial portion of my savings into a new account at a different bank, leaving just enough in my main checking to cover the upcoming bills I was responsible for. The car, a stylish convertible that featured heavily in Liam's "Living My Best Life" posts, was leased. The lease was in my name. The monthly payments were automatically debited from my account. I found the number for the leasing company and left a message, stating my intention to terminate the lease early. By sunrise, I had severed every major financial artery that connected me to Liam. It was a strange, empowering feeling. For years, I had been the silent, invisible infrastructure supporting his life. Now, I was shutting off the power. I spent Sunday and Monday in a blur, fielding frantic calls from the leasing company and the property manager, and making arrangements for my own future. I found a small, furnished apartment for a short-term rental in a quiet neighborhood, a place that was just for me. On Monday afternoon, I used my lunch break to go to the loft with a friend to pack the rest of my personal belongings. Liam wasn't there. The place was a mess, remnants of the party still scattered about. It felt like an abandoned stage set. The first sign of the collapse came on Tuesday. I received a barrage of texts from Liam. "Chloe, my card was declined at the grocery store. What's going on? Did you cancel the card? Why would you do that? I need to buy food. Chloe, please answer me. This isn't funny." I read the messages and felt nothing. I simply deleted them. The real implosion, however, happened on social media, the arena where Liam lived and breathed. His public downfall was as swift as it was brutal. It began with silence. For 3 days after the party, his usually active Instagram feed was dead. No posts, no stories, no witty comments. His followers, a fickle and demanding bunch, started to notice. "Where are you?" the comments on his last post began to read. "Is everything okay?" Then, a week after I left, the first official notice must have arrived. A mutual acquaintance, Sarah, who had always been more my friend than his, called me. "Chloe, are you okay?" she asked, her voice filled with concern. "I'm not going to ask what happened, but I just saw Liam's story and, wow." My curiosity got the better of me. I opened Instagram for the first time in a week and navigated to his profile. He had posted a story. It was a black screen with white text. Hey everyone! Taking some time to deal with some personal challenges right now. Appreciate your support during this difficult time. The hustle never stops, but sometimes you have to refocus. It was classic influencer speak for my life is falling apart. The vague post only fueled more speculation. Over the next 2 weeks, the facade of his perfect life crumbled piece by public piece. He received the official notice of eviction from the landlord. A friend of a friend told me he had a complete meltdown in the lobby of the building, shouting that his famous architect fiancé would straighten it all out. The convertible was repossessed from the building's parking garage. Someone filmed it on their phone, and the video clip circulated among their mutual acquaintances. The shame must have been immense. His social media presence became a spectacle of desperation. He tried to pivot. He posted selfies from coffee shops, trying to maintain the illusion of a glamorous life, but his followers were sharp. "Isn't that the same jacket from 3 weeks ago?" one user commented. "Why are you never in your amazing apartment anymore?" asked another. The final, fatal blow came from an anonymous source. Someone who had been at the party leaked the story of what Mark had said and how Liam had laughed. It spread like wildfire through the local influencer community. Suddenly, the narrative was reframed. Liam wasn't a hustler facing challenges. He was the guy who got dumped for disrespecting the woman who was funding his entire life. His power couple brand was shattered. He was exposed as a fraud. He tried to do damage control, posting a tearful video about toxic rumors and people trying to bring him down, but it was too late. The authenticity he had tried so hard to manufacture was revealed to be a complete sham. His follower count, which he checked so obsessively, began to plummet. Brands that had sent him free products quietly unfollowed him. The fake world he had built, propped up by my salary and his delusions, had collapsed in on itself. And I watched it all from the quiet, peaceful solitude of my new apartment. About a month after I left, when the dust from the initial explosion had settled, they finally found me. I had been careful, keeping my new address private and communicating only with a small circle of trusted friends. But I had to go to work, and my office was a fixed point. I was leaving the building late one evening, my mind still on the complex schematics of the new headquarters project, when I saw them standing by the entrance. Liam and Mark. They were leaning against the wall, looking out of place and deeply uncomfortable under the corporate gleam of the office tower's exterior lights. Liam looked terrible. The confident, polished influencer was gone, replaced by a man who looked worn down and lost. He had lost weight, and his expensive clothes hung on him, looking more like a costume than a natural part of him. Mark stood beside him, his arms crossed, his usual smirk replaced with a tense, guarded expression. My first instinct was to turn around and walk back inside to call security, but then I stopped. I wasn't afraid of them. I was done running, done hiding. I had every right to walk out of my own office building. I straightened my shoulders, clutched the strap of my bag, and walked towards them. "Chloe," Liam said, his voice hoarse. He took a step forward, his hands raised in a gesture of peace. "Please, can we just talk for 5 minutes?" I stopped a few feet away, keeping a safe distance. "There's nothing to talk about, Liam." "Yes, there is," he pleaded, his eyes searching mine for any sign of the woman he used to know. "My life is a complete wreck. You ruined me." The accusation was so breathtakingly selfish that I almost laughed. "I ruined you," I repeated, my voice dangerously calm. "No, Liam, I just stopped paying for your illusion. You and your brand did the rest." "That's not fair," Mark interjected, stepping forward. "He's been a mess. You didn't have to go nuclear, Chloe. You could have just talked to him." I turned my gaze on Mark, feeling a surge of icy disdain. "You are the last person who should be talking to me about what's fair," I said. "You're the one who lit the match. Don't you dare try to lecture me about the fire." Mark flinched and fell silent. Liam's face crumpled with a practiced misery. It was his vulnerable look, the one he used in his videos to garner sympathy. "I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry I laughed. It was the stupidest thing I've ever done. I was drunk. I was trying to be one of the guys. It was a mistake. It wasn't a mistake, Liam. It was a revelation, I corrected him. You laughed because you thought it was funny. You laughed because you agreed with the sentiment. For you, I was a good deal, but you were still holding out for a better one. No, he cried out, and a few passers-by glanced over. I love you. I wanted to marry you. Did you? I challenged, taking a step closer. Did you love me? Or did you love that I had a great job, a stable income, and the patience to let you turn my life into content for your social media? Did you love that I paid for the apartment, the car, the clothes, the food, the very stage on which you performed your life? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you just loved the benefits package. He was speechless. He opened and closed his mouth, but no words came out. He had no defense because I was speaking the unvarnished truth. He tried a different tactic. He softened his expression, his eyes welling up with tears that I was certain were real but born of self-pity, not remorse. Okay, you're right, he whispered. I took you for granted. I was so caught up in the brand I lost sight of what was important. I see that now. But I can change, Chloe. We can fix this. Just come home. We can start over. I'll get a real job, I swear. We can work on this together. The apology, the plea, it was all about him. I can change. We can fix this. I'll get a job. He still saw our relationship as a problem to be solved, a project to be fixed, not a bond that he had irrevocably broken. He didn't understand the fundamental nature of his betrayal. He hadn't just hurt my feelings, he had shown me my role in his life, and it was a role I would never audition for again. You're right about one thing, I said, my voice softening not with forgiveness, but with a sense of finality. You do need to get a job and start over, but you'll be doing it on your own. Chloe, please, he begged, taking another step forward. The problem, Liam, I said, holding up a hand to stop him, is that you're not sorry for hurting me. You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry the money is gone. You're sorry your world fell apart. Your apology isn't for me, it's for you. And I'm not interested in helping you rebuild a life that was built on my back. Mark, seeing that Liam was failing, made one last, desperate attempt. Look, Chloe, his brand is in trouble, but it's not dead. We have a plan, a comeback story. The influencer who lost it all and is fighting his way back. It's powerful, but it only works if you're part of it. The reconciliation, the forgiveness, people would love that. We could monetize it. I just stared at him, the sheer unadulterate audacity of his words was staggering. He was actually trying to pitch me my own life, packaging my pain into a comeback narrative for their brand. In that moment, any lingering sliver of doubt I might have had about my decision vanished forever. I finally did laugh. It wasn't a happy sound. It was sharp and brittle and full of disbelief. You still don't get it, I said, shaking my head as I looked back and forth between them. There is no us. There is no brand. There is no comeback story involving me. It's over. I looked directly at Liam, my expression clear of anger, clear of sadness, clear of everything but resolute finality. I wish you well, Liam. I truly hope you figure out how to build a life on your own 2 feet, but my part in your story is finished. Without waiting for a reply, I turned and walked away. I didn't look back. I could feel their eyes on me, but their power was gone. They were just 2 men standing on a sidewalk, architects of their own demise, watching their greatest asset walk away for good. And as I walked into the cool night air, I felt nothing but the light, liberating freedom of a future that was entirely my own. The months that followed were a quiet revolution. After the final confrontation with Liam and Mark, a profound sense of peace settled over me. There were no more panicked texts, no more desperate voicemails. It was as if they had finally understood that the well had run dry, that the asset they were trying to recover was gone for good. The silence they left behind was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. I threw myself into my work, but this time it felt different. It was no longer a means to support someone else's dream. It was purely for my own fulfillment. The headquarters project was demanding and all-consuming, but in the best way possible. I spent long, satisfying hours at the firm, collaborating with my team, solving complex problems, and watching something magnificent take shape from our collective efforts. My passion for my craft, which had been overshadowed for so long by Liam's drama, burned brighter than ever. My bosses noticed my renewed focus and energy, and the project was a resounding success. My new apartment, though smaller and less glamorous than the loft, became my sanctuary. It was a space that reflected me, filled with my books, my art, and a comfortable quiet that I cherished. I hosted small dinners for my real friends, the ones who had been there for me without question. We'd cook together, have real conversations, and laugh without the pressure of performing for an unseen audience. I reconnected with the simple joys I had let slide. My weekend rock climbing sessions, long walks in the park, and lazy Sunday mornings with nothing on the agenda but a good book and a cup of coffee. I was rebuilding my life, not on a faulty foundation of lies, but on the solid bedrock of my own strength and integrity. I heard about Liam sporadically through the grapevine. Sarah told me he had, in fact, moved back in with his parents. His attempt to rebrand as the fallen influencer fighting his way back had failed spectacularly. His audience, it turned out, wasn't interested in struggle unless it was an artfully curated, aesthetically pleasing version of it. Real struggle, having to get a 9-to-5 job in retail, selling off his designer clothes online to make rent for his parents, giving up the illusion of a glamorous life, was not content they wanted to consume. His social media presence dwindled into irrelevance. The last I heard, he had deleted his accounts altogether. The empire he was so determined to build had vanished as quickly as a digital photo. Mark, too, faced consequences. His reputation as a PR consultant who could build a brand was tarnished by his close association with Liam's public implosion. Word got around about his role in the breakup, and his slick, cynical approach was suddenly seen as toxic. In a world built on relationships and reputation, he had made himself a liability. One evening, about a year after I had walked out of the party, I was sitting on my small balcony, looking out at the city lights. The view wasn't as panoramic as the one from the loft, but it was infinitely more beautiful to me because it was mine. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. It was a link to a news article about the public library I had designed. It had just won a prestigious national award for architectural design. I clicked the link and saw my name, my photo, and quotes from a recent interview I had done. There was no mention of a power couple, no branding, no hashtags. It was just me and my work, recognized on its own merit. A slow, genuine smile spread across my face. The pain of Liam's betrayal had been immense, a deep and scarring wound. But wounds heal and scars fade. That night, I realized the betrayal had been a gift in disguise. It had been a brutal, painful wake-up call that forced me to see the truth and to choose myself. It taught me the invaluable lesson that self-respect is not negotiable. You cannot build a life with someone who sees you as a temporary fixture, a convenient stepping stone on their path to something better. You have to be the protagonist in your own story, not a supporting character in someone else's. I had walked away from a fake world and in doing so had found a real one. A life that was quieter, less glamorous, but infinitely more authentic and fulfilling. I had lost a fiancé and a fantasy, but I had gained myself back. And that was a trade I would make again in a heartbeat. So, what do you think? Was I right to walk away so completely, or should I have tried to work through it? Have you ever been in a situation where you felt more like a resource than a partner? It's a tough position to be in, and I think my story shows why valuing yourself above all else is so crucial. Sometimes, the hardest decision is also the one that sets you free.